Okay, hello everybody. This is Steve Stewart. I'm your entrepreneurship professor, and in this video, we're going to talk about customer interviewing. All right, as you develop your business model canvas, you are looking at your value proposition, what value you bring to the market, and for whom. That is your customer segmentation. And you want to see if you have this right. You're creating hypotheses in your business model canvas to see if in fact you do solve a problem that's compelling to enough people. And so you've mapped out kind of a minimum viable product, an MVP of core features that you think will solve the problem that you're trying to solve, features and benefits that will be valuable to a particular customer segment, and you need to test to see if your hunch is right. Well, one of the very first things you need to do is make sure that you understand the problem well. We touched on this a bit in the design thinking video, but in this particular video, we're going to talk about actually sort of walking through customer interviewing skills. It's one of the most important skill sets you can form as an entrepreneur. And the reason why is because, well, it actually is a little trickier than it might sound. When you're interviewing customers, you want to be careful not to lead the witness. In other words, you want to try to be careful not to tell the customer what to think. You want to find out for real, authentically, if you understand their problem well. Now, it may be a problem that you have yourself, and so you're trying to validate whether or not your experience is in common with other people's experiences. That's perfectly fine. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a customer interview questionnaire with a few questions on it that will get potential customers talking to you. And these questions need to be open-ended and conversational in nature. Now, it does you no good to ask questions like, on a scale of 1 to 7, how bad is this problem to you? If they say 4, what does that mean? If they say 6, what does that mean compared to the person who says 5? You really don't know that. That kind of numerical data at this stage of the game is kind of meaningless. It doesn't tell you anything about why or what particular challenges they're having. It just tells you that to them, they think the problem sucks. Well, that's not what you're really getting at, though. You want to find out how they experience the problem. How does it frustrate them? What emotions do they feel? Remember, in the value proposition lecture, it's those emotions that people are paying to solve an experience. And so people want to pay to feel better. People want to pay to feel anything. And so you want to find out what the feelings are that are associated with this challenge, with this problem, and what it's going to take to help them experience some relief from this problem. So what you're really doing is trying to examine, do you understand how customers truly experience this problem? You want to ask open-ended questions. Now, let me stop there and say this. It's absolutely okay to ask a single binary question, kind of a yes or no thing at the beginning, if it means you're trying to not waste people's time. You're trying to find out if you're talking to the right person. So if you're creating if you're creating a product that you're going to sell to people, parents of grade school kids that are online right now, well, you need to find out if they're parents of grade school kids that are online right now, or grandparents, or somebody taking care of a kid who's in grade school who's going to school online right now. And if they're not, if they are single with no kids, or if they're married with no kids and they don't have any kids right now, then you need to find that out up front. So it's perfectly okay in a case like that to ask simply a binary elimination question to help you get at the right person. But once you've done that, that's the last yes or no question you need to ask. And from that point forward, you need to ask conversational questions. The best conversational question you can start with begins with the phrase, "Tell me about." And really what you want to do is get them talking about the last time they experienced this problem that you're trying to solve. Tell me about the last time you experienced back pain. Tell me about the last time you experienced sitting in a chair all day. Tell me about the last time you experienced your child being in an online class. Whatever the case is, Now, you're not leading them. You're not trying to tell them you have a problem and we're going to get you to admit it right now. And you're shining the spotlight in their eye. You don't want to do that. No, instead, what you want to do is you want to just get them talking about the problem in general. If you're trying to solve some kind of grocery shopping problem, then you don't start by saying, well, tell me about the last time you experienced this problem. You're going to start by saying, tell me about the last time you went grocery shopping. Tell me about the entire experience from start to finish. And you want to walk them through that. And they go, well, I went to Publix. Did you do anything before that? Well, yeah, I looked at Publix's online website. Ah, okay. All right. So let's back up before then. Tell me about how you prepare to go shopping. Now, do you see that? I'm kind of making them answer the entire breadth of the question. I asked them, what are the problems you have? Tell me about the last time you went grocery shopping. And they kind of started me in the middle. They started me with, well, I went to Publix. Well, wait a minute. A whole lot of things happened before you went to Publix, and that may be part of the problem. And so let me find out about the whole process. So make sure you get them to discuss the entire process. By the way, it's perfectly okay to ask what's called prompts. And that is when you're asking them to tell you more about something. So if they say, well, I went to Publix, and I went inside and I started at the produce section and I just started picking out the things on my list. It's okay to stop and say, okay, hold on just a minute. You said that you went to Publix. Tell me about that decision you made to go to Publix instead of other places. Tell me about how when you went inside, tell me about how you chose what you were going to do first. So you can back up and ask them to drill down deeper into a particular part of their answer. Once they've kind of described sort of a day in their life with this thing you're trying to learn more about, then you ask them, tell me what was challenging about that. Tell me about the problems you had. And then ask them, so that's the second really open-ended question. Tell me about what was challenging about that, or tell me about the problems you had that you encountered while you were doing that. A follow-up question to that one is to ask, and how did that challenge make you feel? And why? That's where you're going to start getting some emotions. Okay, so your first question might be binary just to weed out that you're talking to the right person, but the first open-ended question needs to begin. Tell me about this broad subject. Now, tell me what was challenging about that. And this is after you've asked a bunch of prompts to hear their story. Tell me what was challenging about that. Tell me how that challenge made you feel. Another follow-up question to the challenge question is to ask, tell me all the ways that challenge cost you something. Maybe it was money. Maybe it was time. Maybe it was frustration. Maybe it was missed opportunity somewhere else. But whatever it is, get them talking about the potential costs of that challenge for them. Okay? So you're hearing ways that you're creating value, and you're hearing what kinds of value you're actually going to be creating. Another important open-ended question to ask is, tell me how you're currently trying to solve this problem. So you're trying to get at the solutions they're currently using. And this is going to tell you something about maybe your competition, or it may tell you about certain key metrics on which you are competing, because they're telling you how they're trying to solve the problem now. And once they talk to you about how they're trying to solve that problem, then you can ask this follow-up question to that. Tell me what's still not great about that solution that you just mentioned. Tell me what's still not awesome about that. Tell me what problems you're still having. So you're trying in general to learn more about the problems that they are experiencing in this space, how those problems make them feel, what those problems really cost them, how they're currently trying to solve those problems, and how those solutions still aren't cutting it. So you're really, really learning very well, how you need to build out a value proposition that's different than what they've already been trying. Because they're telling you, once you begin to hear this over and over and over again, they're telling you, what the problems are that still remain in the marketplace. Once you've done this, obviously you want to be very, very thankful to them, but you can begin to ask them questions like, tell me how you learned about that solution. And that's where you're getting into when they tell you some solutions they're already using. Tell me how you learned about that. Did you find out about it from a friend, or who'd you hear about it from, or where did you hear about it from? And what you're doing there is you're learning actually more about relationships and channels they currently use to try to solve that problem. And that may tell you where you need to be in the future to intercept them in those spaces. Now, there's a few don'ts here. One of the main don'ts is obviously don't ask single word questions that they can answer with a quick yes or a quick no, or by giving you a number, 5, or asking them questions like, when was the last time you did this? Friday. What difference does it make when the last time was? You're trying to find out how they experienced the problem. So you don't need to ask these questions they can answer with 1 or 2 words. How frequently do you do this? How frequently do you encounter this? Weekly. Well, that may help you somewhat to learn how intense the problem may be, but be cautious about asking too many questions like that. Really be cautious about asking any of them. But if you have to, only keep that limited to 1 or 2 at most. You're not here to do a survey. As I mentioned earlier, surveys aren't going to give you any viable data. It's not going to give you anything that's going to help you to go back to the drawing board, think about your idea and how it creates value and how you're going to overcome the challenges that they told you about. You're not going to get that from collecting 1 through 7 Likert scale survey answers from people. So get rid of the survey and create instead an interview protocol. Several questions, 5 or 6. And this shouldn't take a tremendous amount of their time, but if they get chatty, go ahead and let them get chatty. Now, I always recommend that you do 2 things. Number 1, record it. So when possible, tell the listener, I'd like to record this, it'll help me remember what you said. And number 2, write data down as they're speaking. So for example, you may want to just note very quickly some demographics if you can. Are they married or single, if that matters? How old are they, if that matters to your product, or if it matters in your business model somehow. So you may want to capture a little bit of customer data about them. And then the third thing that you want to do is be noticing like their tone, their facial expressions, things like that, and call attention to them. So if you ask about a problem they're having and they go, oh, well, then you want to ask them, why did you make that sound? Why did you do that? Oh, like that. What made you do that? You want to press on some of that body language or tonal cues that give you some indication that there's some real data there that you want to investigate to get more into how they're really experiencing these things. Okay, once you've interviewed customers, and in real life we would try to interview as many as we possibly can, then the second thing you want to do is get this data down in an organized way. If you're with a team, everyone in the team needs to ask exactly the same questions, because that's how you're going to capture that data consistently so that as a team you can analyze this. If I have one set of interview questions and my co-founder has a different set of interview questions, and we come back together to talk about what we learned, then we're going to be talking 2 different languages to each other. We can't compare the answers. But if we're both asking the same sets of questions and he talks to 20 and I talk to 20 and we get back together and we talk about what we learned, then we can use real trends in our data. And so you want to be able to probably map this out even using an Excel spreadsheet where you put the customers on the side and the questions across the top, and you can kind of keep notes inside the cells, inside a table, so that you can look at a table very quickly and say, as I look down what people said about the challenges that they had, I see themes developing in there that are very, very consistent and very, very common. So it's absolutely fair, once you've asked these questions and you've recorded this data and you've taken notes on it, maybe you do that in a spreadsheet so then you can overlay those on top of each other across a team and you can consistently see how people answered any given question. Okay, so again, you need to create an interview protocol questionnaire that has the same questions. Put that somewhere on a sharing site, a Google Drive, where everyone on your team can access it so that everyone's asking the same questions of people. And then you want to ask a set number of potential customers these questions. One last quick word. Some people may have multi-sided models. So in other words, you're bringing two parties together in your model, and you need to get questions from a balance of both of them. Okay, so if I'm talking to a student who's saying, I want to bring car enthusiasts together with car parts providers, well, then we're going to need to talk to both of those people about the problems they're having, solving the problem we're trying to solve. So I need to talk to people on both sides. So make sure that you bear that in mind, that you're going to have to talk to people on both sides of the model and get a balance of each of those. And if you're in a student team and you're doing this, then at least a few people need to be talking to different people on each side of that model. Okay, this was about customer interview protocols. Hope you learned something valuable here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.